discussion on this today, and that's why I'm bringing it. It's not a big deal, but I'm bringing it up. And I grew up in Galveston during the Sam Maceo era and all that, but
Okay.
there's discussion about gambling in this, whether they should have gambling in the state.
Okay.
And whether we should put that up for a vote of the people as to whether there should be gambling and take
Okay.
the money and use it for education, you know.
Okay. I wouldn't bet on that.
The education part.
Yeah. But we know how that works, right? We have learned our lesson. Of course, I'm not gonna be in the state legislature. In the last session, the 82nd session, the breakdown was 101 Republicans and 49 Democrats. And many of the Republicans are anti-gambling. So we knew we weren't gonna see it. Last session, it wasn't gonna come out. And Steve, you may be tracking this, I don't know. Most of the talk, of course, for some reason, I hadn't been real focused on the state legislative races. But most of the talk is they're gonna go down to 90, Republicans are going down to 92, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. And so you're probably gonna see a pretty strong R majority this time too. So with that in mind, and most of them probably not very gambling friendly, I don't anticipate that coming out of the legislature.
What do you see as the pros and cons of that? To me,
My,
it's a
look at the
complex
time, it's
subject.
time to get going. That's a whole nother, discussion we could have on another day. I'm not gonna be involved in that. I can tell you, privately, from what I know, I was one of the floor whips in the Texas House. Apparently they liked the job I did the first session because they asked me if I would be in charge of all the floor whips in the Republican caucus. The second session, I was made the internal communications director. And one of the things we would do is we would go around and we would say we have a piece of legislation that we're looking at. And the speaker wants to know, or the other side wants to know, the Democratic caucus wants to know, is there any sense in bringing this up? Because you know what, if there's 100 and something votes against something, there's no sense in fighting it on the floor of the House. If you know it's not gonna pass, why waste the time? We're only there for 140 days. Let's go to something that has a chance of being debated and maybe passed, tweaked and passed. And when you walked around and we took a list, I had 16 members in my whip section, and then the other 5 had whatever there was. You walked around and you said, look, where are you on this bill? Yay, nay, or whatever. And you figured out real quickly that when you had 70, 80, 90 people against something, and a few Democrats would vote with the Republicans, it wasn't gonna pass. So we could discuss the pros and cons, but you figure out real quickly that with a Republican majority, it's probably not gonna pass. Yeah. What's your next question, Jim? But yes, ma'am.
Is there something these good people could do to help you in your campaign other than voting for you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for bringing that up, Barbara. We do have a
It's my
website.
job.
Yeah. We do have a website, randyweber.org. And of course, it's gonna cost us $500,000 to run this race. And we raised it somewhere south of about $400,000 right now, believe it or not. People are beginning to pay attention to our race. We're making history. Dr. Ron Paul has been the congressman here for a long time. And so if you would be willing to do that, go on site and contribute, whether you contribute $25 or $2,500, which is the max, that's always very helpful.
We actually, Randy, have forms here as well.
And we actually have forms here as well. We have yard signs. I've got my campaign management here, as you can see. So you better help me that way, spread the word, put out signs. You can spread the word. I tell people that I actually have legislative experience. You've met me, you've heard a little of my story. I started an air conditioning company from scratch. I built it the old-fashioned way, hard, honest work. Brenda got her teaching degree, and here's a part of the story I didn't tell you. Appreciate you bringing it up. We both graduated from the University of Houston at Clear Lake. Now, God has a sense of humor. We were gonna wait 5 years to have children. Okay, we got married November the 6th, 1976. On Halloween, 1977, we lacked 6 days of being married 1 year. Miss Kristen Nicole was born. So I tell everybody that all 3 of our children were planned, but only 2 were scheduled. So I worked at my parents' camper business. I finished up my degree at night at U of H at Clear Lake. I took 12 hours, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. I worked 5.
I don't know how I got pregnant.
I remember those days. Those were the good old days. Don't say things like that. I kept our baby. I worked Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The RV store was open on Saturdays. I worked 45 hours a week. She went to U of H and she took classes all day Wednesday to get her teaching degree. I did it at night, 12 hours, finished my last 2 semesters. She did it on Wednesdays. You know how many loans we took out for our college degree? 0. We paid for all of our tuition, all of our books. We did it the old-fashioned way. Now my 3 kids, I told them when they graduated, the Lord had blessed us with a good air conditioning business. It did well. So when you want to graduate from high school, you want to go to college, you can go anywhere you want. If you want me to pay, you go to U of H. And we did. We paid for undergrad degree. We paid for tuition and books. We took out no loans, you know. One of our sons did get a scholarship, and I said, but you got to get a part-time job for spending money. We'll provide you with a car, with insurance, with gasoline, but you will get a part-time job. And they're, oh, Dad, you don't know how hard it is going to college and having to have a part-time job. I reached into my pocket, and I said, here's a dime, go find a phone booth, call somebody that cares. You know what they said? What's a phone booth? You know, don't tell me how hard it is. After I got my college degree in business and a minor in public affairs, I decided I wanted to get out of my parents' business and start one of my own. I went back to Alvin Junior College where we met. I knew nothing about air conditioning, Don. I went back to Alvin Junior College and took refrigeration air conditioning classes. I was just too stupid to know you're not supposed to be able to do it that way. And hung out my shingle. Yesterday I couldn't spell AC, and today I are one. And built it from the ground up, 31 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Brenda will tell you how hard that was. First 2 or 3 years, we really struggled. I'd have to go without a paycheck many times to make sure my people got theirs. She can tell you about the light company, back then, HL&P.
Thank you.
You bet. Coming and knocking on the door and saying, Mr. Weber, Ms. Weber, we need to get a check or we're going to have to turn your lights off. We struggled. I know what it is to go through business and to build one from the ground up and create jobs. That's why I like to tell people I'm the only candidate in this race that has legislative experience, that has built a business for the last 31 years, district-wide. She's from Beaumont, lived in Missouri County when we met. She lived in Galveston County. I know that we don't want to send somebody to Congress that needs on-the-job training. Congress is no place for on-the-job training. We have a president that's getting OJT. How's that working for us? Not so well. So that's my background. I appreciate that question. Thank you, Barbara. I really feel like I've got a wealth of knowledge and experience to bring with me because of my life's background and the way that we've grown up together and raised a family in this area. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I probably should. I'm in the insurance business.
Okay.
How are we going to, we don't want it regulated, but how are we gonna make it where people can actually afford their homeowners, their windstorm, and their flood insurance, and keep companies from pulling out? I know they're guaranteed a profit. How can we take care of this?
That's a hard balance to strike. Of course, TWIA, as you will know, Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, which is the state's windstorm agency, was established because many of the insurance companies wouldn't underwrite. Now, here's something y'all that I didn't say about me. About 2 years ago, a year and a half maybe, I started thinking, I'm an entrepreneur on Weber's Air and Heat, almost 30 years at that point. I'm the Texas State Rep from the top half of Missouri County, know a lot of people. I can take my business, let me knock on wood, pretty much runs itself, okay? It's got to the point where we get a lot of customers. My guys know my philosophy. They treat my customers like I want them treated. I have a great office manager. And I thought, I'm going to diversify. I'm going to start another company. I'm going to start an independent insurance agency. And so I would take my business expertise and I would do that. So I went down to a Kaplan insurance, a testing agency rather, and I took the courses for property and casualty and accident and health. I am a card-carrying insurance person. I got my license. And then I thought I'm going to open up an agency. I started putting together names. I thought it might work. And then Ron Paul, what nerve, announced he wasn't going to run for Congress again. And my phone started ringing, Weber, we want you to run for this. I'm like, man, I just got my insurance license and run for Congress or open up that agency. That's the kind of things that I've been through that process. I've learned, on the accident and health side, all the regulations, especially as it applies to Medicare. that needs to be looked at. We do have to balance the fact that we like to be a free market economy. We do need some regulations. I'm told, and I don't know this for a fact, that Florida has a good model. Maybe not so much.
Not so much.
I haven't looked at it because I just kind of got into really the thick of things when Ron Paul made his announcement. But you're exactly correct. We did not like, your Texas State Legislature did not like the way TWIA performed last time. And so I don't know if you're aware of this, but we totally reformed TWIA. We fired the people at the top. This is a sad but true note. Most of the, forgive me, Ann, most of the lawyers that were involved in TWIA got a lot of money. You know, normally when there's a 40%, for example, hey, John, when there's a 40% contingency or whatever, we think that's a lot of money. But for the amount of claims paid out through TWIA, we felt like that they got almost closer to 60%. We felt like there were some inside deals going on. So TWIA was broke, and they're talking about you may know the number, 17 or 18% increase. Right, right. We do need to look at that. We do want to be careful. And that's why I like saying business experience ought to go into the legislature and to DC. Because before you make those kind of drastic rules, you need to consider the impact on a business. And if you've not run one, you know, we live under EPA rules with Freon in the air conditioning business. If you don't know what it does to a business, that's no big deal. That's why I love business owners going, but we do need to look at that. You're absolutely right.
Because you have companies like State Farm sent non-renewals to like 11,000 customers in the coastal area.
Yes, ma'am.
They're pulling out.
Right,
I mean, I know companies are in it for the money,
right.
but if you are in insurance, that's a risk
Oh, you bet.
you need to take.
And as an agent, you'll recognize, you know, risk being the transference, you know, onto somebody. We have a pool. We did go to, you know, that's one of the reasons why it's good to know your state legislator, by the way. Steve was there, and I don't know if he got involved in insurance issues, but there was 18 coastal counties when, after Hurricane Ike hit, it devastated us. I mean, the fund that we had. And so, I don't know how many state reps that wound up being, but we had a coalition of 18 counties all on the Gulf Coast, or going down to Brownsville, and there were legislators who said, look, we'll just raise the rates on TWIA, because if you live on the coastal counties, you'll have to pay more. We said, wait a minute. What, sure, so we got a bad hurricane in 2008 named Ike, but what about, they happen, what, every 25 or 30 years, give or take? Of course, that didn't help us that it happened after the other two hurricanes. But what about you guys? Y'all have hailstorms and tornadoes in spring and winter. You have dust storms, you have ice storms in the north part of Texas. So insurance is the transference of risk, is the way they define it for the test. So what about you guys? Y'all have all this stuff going on. We don't ask y'all to pay higher rates when you have big spring storms and stuff. So, you know, we need to look at it, but we need to be very careful before we promulgate rules that affect industry, which is exactly what the EPA does not do. When the federal EPA promulgates rules, they don't take into account the impact it has on industry. When Obama shut down drilling, the moratorium in the Gulf, after the Deepwater Horizon incident, I was actually in DC when that, or close to the time that happened, at some different meetings. We thought, you know, that is a gross overreaction. If an airliner goes down, it's tragic. 100 or 200 people lose their lives, it's tragic, we hate that. But you don't shut down the entire airline industry. You know what I'm saying? So the EPA and those kinds of agencies need to really think before they promulgate those rules.